What? And then I've got, no, I'm cut off. All right, hello. Start live video. All right, are you in here? All right, you're not. All right, look at us. You guys there? Hello?
Hi.
Hi. We're setting shit up.
Can you rotate?
I don't think so. Not on Facebook Live.
What will it do?
I don't think it'll let you go sideways.
Yeah, it tells me.
Yeah. It'd be nice if it did, didn't?
I don't understand why not.
I think they're optimizing for an iPhone. Shit like that. All right. All right, you've been invited. We'll tag you now. Right. All right, you're on that one. Oh, all right.
Okay.
So let's go over the handbook.
Yes.
And we'll go over like how to use a handbook with the Yoga Anatomy book by Leslie Kaminoff and Amy Matthews. So like on the original edition, you know, Leslie Kaminoff is credited and Amy's name is buried deeply. But then I think that, you know, her appreciation for like that granular understanding of what's happening, you know, within the body and explaining the systems and such, not so much Leslie's jam. She got far more credit on the second edition, which is also much thicker, but I like this one. So why don't we open up to, let's say, well, this is personal. Perfect. Child's pose.
Child's pose.
Yeah.
So what we're doing actually is talking about our YTT. Right?
Yeah, we're talking about our YTT.
YTT.
Yoga teacher training. All right, so yeah, you're
Balasana.
good. You're good. Here you are.
Child's pose.
Okay, so this is Kit. She's alum. She did a really, really great job on our photo shoot for this. And then I always tell people too that, you know, I picked her because she does a nice job of showing the alignment of the direction we're heading, not necessarily like where everyone else is going to end up going. So if you compare in yoga teacher training, if you compare what's happening with Kit here versus what's happening with Amy, this is actually Amy. I didn't know this. So in this book, if you have the Yoga Anatomy book, it's Amy and Leslie, and then another guy, Jay, that are the art or the models.
Okay.
I just learned that when I took their.
That's pretty cool.
It really is. It's a whole nother. I just thought they were fictional people.
Artistic.
Yeah, like this is person. It has hair, right?
Yeah.
No, this is Amy Matthews.
Yeah.
Which is neat, I think. And then they also put like what happens in Amy's body when Amy does child's pose.
Gotcha.
And so what Leslie Kaminoff often says is, you know, this is going to be Amy's anatomy based on hers, not so much everybody else's. And I think that translates really importantly to folks depending on how they go about doing the posture. So this one, what's it say there? You can read that one.
So resting pose that lengthens and stretches the spine, connecting your third eye to the mat. Feel the palms draw forward and into the mat as the spine opens.
Right. So that openness. So like here, if you're looking at the book, don't get mad at me, Leslie. I hope this is okay. I am telling everyone to buy your program. By the way, buy Leslie's program. Okay, so if you look at the book, you see the red is the muscles being used, the primary movers. So when I say find the primary movers to child's pose, this is what I'm talking about, right? Whereas the blue reflects the points of contact. So this really changes up when we change the cues to the qualities and the modifications, right? So depending on what starts to happen, like if your forehead doesn't meet the ground, then this blue would not illuminate, of course, which is completely fine, right? No right or wrong there. But what is neat, and this is also called embryo pose, I was reading it. I've told students there's no expectation to like read this book cover to cover, but I like the first manual better. I would say better than the second. The second is kind of like that's definitely a reference guide, but the first I think you could power through and read it. And so I was reading it last night, or at least trying to, as Nova wasn't lying down on it. I'm talking about child's pose replicates the primary curve of the unborn child. So what happens when before you're born is your spine is like rounded this way. And then as it moves through the birth canal, and I think it's in a page or two down from here, is when we see the first start of the cervical curve of the neck. And then only at around age 10 do we see the curve of the lumbar spine.
Oh, wow.
which I didn't know that.
I don't either.
Remember, I was like, oh my God, I learned so much in this anatomy course with Kaminoff this summer. Oh my God, wow, that's what I've been doing with my time. But in the belly, the spine is rounded. And then as it moves through the birth canal, that's the first time the spine sees this, which, I mean, so really like, the vaginal birth can help prepare the baby in that way. And then as the child moves into like 6 to 10 years old, they start to develop that lumbar spine.
Interesting.
So that's that important piece of like kids yoga.
Yeah.
Is know that their spine is really fully formed till they're around 10-ish, give or take, depending on the individual or so on. So that's why when babies sit 3 to 9 months, they still kind of have the roundness with a little bit of a neck there.
Right.
And then they hit that year old, they're holding their neck upright, right? And they're starting to form that lumbar curve there, which is also helping them sit upright and stand upright, that counterbalance.
Yep.
And then as they move to the 6 to 10 years old, then they start to have the full lumbar curve. And so the idea would be the base of the foot goes up, and then the lumbar curve helps establish that grounding, and then it comes rounded through thoracic spine, through the back, through the shoulder area, rib cage area, and then up through the neck. And that's why it's so essential that we not do this all day, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's so essential that we not do this all day, like on every front.
Yes.
So important.
So you can just tuck the chin. I always say, and that like lengthens out your back.
Precisely.
When I teach.
Yes, which you do so delightfully. All right, I lost the page. So I just randomly opened any page, and we turned out to be in child's pose. Are they in alphabetical order?
In that book, I'm not sure. Oh, wait.
In my book, they are. Except for one posture. I think one posture made it out of order. Driving me crazy. All right, so as we move back to Balasana, child's pose. This one. So noticing on the blue is the point of contact. Awesome. And the red are the primary muscles. So then based on the cues, the qualities, or modifications, how do we go about changing this? So for me, some people are like, oh, take the child's pose, it's easy pose, it's going to feel so good. For me, the child's pose is one of the most uncomfortable poses you could put me in.
Right.
I could hang out down dog all day.
Is that because of tightness of hips or?
Precisely, Lindsay.
Tightness of hips.
How did you guess? She's so smart. So that being said, as she comes down, her forehead meets it. But then, like, going back, we were talking about, like, the baby taking child's pose and what that looks like. It also, there's a level of comfort that happens on a neurological level of reaching the forehead to the earth or a block by bringing the floor to a block that's of value that recreates, like, nursing. Studies show.
Interesting.
Right? So there's just like just this contact, even if you put your head on your forehead.
It's very true. Like
it's
like
a
very
calming,
yeah.
Like, oh my God, it's going to be okay. Like we do these things, but maybe we don't necessarily understand why. And so that might mean that you might be better off having the hips up higher and not so set on having the hips on the heels.
Right. And
more intent on bringing the forehead for that grounding. If, say, that day in your class, you're aiming to ground your class, like if it's come visit me for grounding yoga at 6:30, then
yeah, we have that.
We do have that. Come see us.
A couple nights a week.
All right, so that's good. All right, so then why don't I allow you to read? Just because I hear myself babbling for a good long time. So I'll let you read the cues, the qualities, and the modification for these fine folks while I drink.
Great. So cues. So how we get somebody into a pose. So laying prone. So that's face down.
Yeah.
Extend your arms out. Press back until your belly sets atop your thighs. Press your palms. Press into the palms of your hands. And then rest your forehead softly onto the mat. So modifications, I think you said sometimes we can talk about before the qualities.
Yeah.
So modifications, like you were just saying about being able to get the head down, and how if we have tight hips, then we can modify by maybe not sitting all the way back on the heels, allowing space. So you could even adjust with blocks or bolsters or blankets, moving away from props, but maybe moving away from traditional props and using things that are more like easily accessible in the home, rolled up towels.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rolled up towels, blankets, yes.
Yes. And then you can also bring your arms to your sides and rest your cheeks down for different types of variations.
Which is so nice.
Very nice.
Like forward isn't always better, especially, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you said mention to the sides, and she even has it in this.
Mhm.
I feel kind of a tightness in my neck.
Yeah.
Like my hips are tight and I'm down and I'm crowded. I'm scrunched in. I probably had lunch
Right,
before
and then
yoga.
it's like your shoulders go into your ears that you don't want. So if you can just
Right.
like spread it out.
Yeah, I
That's
almost
the way.
prefer it to come back this way. And I had learned this in Pilates as
Mhm.
seal.
Oh yeah,
This is what they call
seal
that.
pose.
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but do check.
Yeah.
So yeah, those modifications make all the difference and are really nice. And I think the big piece of this too is, if the story that I tell myself is my hips are tight and therefore this is not that comfortable, I'd rather do a downward facing dog,
Right.
that this is probably the pose that I need.
Sure. And just modify it and then let it organically progress.
Yeah.
That's the best thing about yoga is just letting
Yeah.
it organically progress.
Moving through.
Yeah,
which
one
I
day
like.
you can become small like a ball.
Small like a ball, right?
Yeah.
So basic kneeling forward bend. And I love that they put the classification and level in this book. So like the idea for yoga teachers out there with Edge or elsewhere is to pick your posture and then open it up and see which one's on the book as close as you possibly can. And then by doing so, you start to master what's happening in one posture, say 1 week.
Mhm.
One peak pose a week, it goes a really long way.
Mhm.
So then they really go into like the joint actions, what's working, lengthening, obstacles and notes, and then the breathing, which I think is a big piece. I didn't know this until I took Kamenoff's course, but he was saying that so his studio in New York is like the breathing product.
Mm.
It's not yoga sama. It's based and centered around breathing, which I think is actually kind of cool.
Right. So.
Right. Oh, this is fun that it should come up is this one, King Pigeon. We were talking about this one yesterday.
Yes.
During yoga teacher training.
With pigeon sails.
Right? Through the pigeon sails, which is really nice. So why don't you open it up to pigeon sails because that's what happened here. And I'll show you guys this one here.
So
and that's the one that's on the cover of this infamous book. This book is used in pretty much almost every yoga teacher training there is. So, okay, what you got?
And so pigeon sails, which is part of our yoga snippets, which real quick, a yoga snippet is if you are, we all know that whenever we're excited to teach and then we get to our first class to teach or we start thinking about sequencing teaching and you think, holy cow, how do I get somebody to do that? So that's when the real teaching comes in. And so we have these snippets here already set up for you. So it's just like essentials, the essentials of getting people to move in a yogic way in your classes. So pigeon sails, moving from half pigeon to full pigeon back into child's pose.
Which I love. And I think some of the trainings yesterday, different transitions to get from that pigeon to the child's pose. They did down dog, some did table, right? They came up with a variation. But the idea is if you're already face down, keep staying face down so that you have a nice smooth transition in your class and so on.
Right.
So, okay. So let's see. What else do we have here? Advanced kneeling back bend. So as we bring it up, as we advance our pose, I think that, the idea to share with folks is let your pose go as far as it wants to go. But also understanding that there's benefits to the body by going a little further and advancing the pose. And I know that that's really your specialty. Right. I know you have a more advanced practice than mine.
Hi, Jojo.
Hi, honey. Nice to see you. All right. So we are talking about pigeon pose. And so anyway, all right. So we were talking about advancing it. And so why do it? When you do this, which version of pigeon is in your personal practice?
I usually start out with an active pigeon and then I go down. I don't always do the back leg stretch, and I definitely am not in the back bend process yet.
Yeah, but reaching for the foot.
Right.
No. A strap can be helpful.
A strap can be helpful, or I can grab it like in the crease of my elbow.
Yeah, which is nice. I like the crease. I like the crease of the elbow better than the strap because I think the strap offers us a false sense of flexibility that may or may not be there.
True.
And that the posture can then kind of fall apart.
Right.
So like with the strap, let's say.
Integrity, definitely.
Right. Yeah, the integrity, good word, of the posture begins to fall apart. So like here in this one, essentially what we're working is the quads, which is the front of the thighs, and the glutes. And of course the front body as well. But
core for stabilization.
And then notice like all this happening in the rib cage, the diaphragm and such. But what I find is if they want to use the strap, or if they're so determined to reach the foot and they're not able to do it, the knee actually comes out, right? And it externally rotates the hip joint. So not so prone to injury, but we're not going to also be able to fire those quads.
Right, no.
That's the other side of it.
So we have a hip opener.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, that's what we're going for.
On the other side.
Yeah, that's what we're trying for. So if they're determined to reach the foot, but their practice isn't there, it's going to be the expense of the primary movers that we were after to start off with.
Yes,
which can be okay.
Sure.
I mean, I guess there's no wrong in it as long as the rotation happens at the hip and not the knee.
Right.
So can you talk about the knee stuff a little bit for our practitioners and for those that are watching this later for this recording?
Yeah.
Like, how does a practitioner know what the right posture is for them?
For a knee?
Yeah, just in general.
Yeah, I guess with that, I guess I always announce, like, you have to know, I think, whenever you're coming to a class, I think you have to bring that sort of sense of responsibility. If your knee can do that or not.
Yeah.
And so I think my job as a practitioner or as a teacher is to offer modifications. Yeah. And then hopefully my students know whether they can or cannot bend their knee in that fashion. And if not, totally fine, but I can help you get into another way, another stretch.
Well, and I think that that's exactly it too. I think there is that piece of instructors holding space for the students to take responsibility for their own personal practice.
Yes.
Like
there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
That if you can't get into this particular pose, you can definitely get a stretch just as good in another way.
Right.
That works for you.
Yeah. So, and that's why I like bringing the anatomy to yoga so much. For that exact reason. Like, can we get it another way? Can we pick it up another way? Can we engage those quads, those glutes, and core?
Yeah, for sure.
In lots of different postures you can. Even by leaving the foot down, it's really affecting the lower legs. But like maybe if you just did in mountain pose some simple heel raises, up, down, check. So if you're teaching a class that you have some newer practitioners coming, then maybe try and do that to help develop that lower leg complex and those muscles that are there, right? Rather than the expectation of, all right, everybody grab their toes.
What?
Which may or may not work out. And so I love that we opened it the 2 pages we did, like how random.
Yeah.
And then this too, and I'll show our peeps, but if you look at the alignment of what's going on between the hip to the knee to the foot, it explains why they want you to have the foot parallel with the top of the mat.
Yes.
Do you do that in your pigeon?
I do.
What does that look like for you?
I work towards my shin being parallel to the front of the mat, yes. And that is because I definitely feel it more in my hip versus my knee. I'm able to find more stability in my hips in general, so that's why I work on an active pigeon. Yeah. To work on more of the squaring of the hips and finding that core support. And then keeping the foot at a 90-degree angle to ensure safety in the knee. That was just what I was always taught. So it just kind of makes sense the way that the angles go for my body. And so, instead of just bending your leg and laying on it, you could maybe not go as far down into the pose and still get that same angle, and then get into the spot you're meant to get into.
Well, and that's really well said, because it does protect the knee, and that's what it's aimed to do. Although I have seen students where they're not there because they don't have the flexibility in the hips. Right. And they take the foot in the middle of class and they full on bring it. Right. It's coming. It's coming Slow up. Down. No. Might hurt my knee in yoga. Well, again, that will be why usually.
Personal responsibility. Know it feels good. Know it doesn't feel good. And then the whole thing of non-attachment, no judgment, just doing what you can.
Which really moves us into our yamas and our niyamas, which is living yoga.
Maybe we should have a podcast.
We should have a podcast. Check. Yeah. All right. So why don't we open up to pigeon? I think here I have it listed as half pigeon.
Yes, it's all about
and so there's no such thing as half pigeon. Like I just made it up for the sake of sharing an idea, like half pigeon, half moon. But feel free to like coin terms in your classes and then share those with people. Because when you do that, then like I think it implies, all right, well, let's all move into half pigeon. Well, that doesn't sound like this, right?
Right.
But then to make sure that it's an all levels class, then holding space as people can be in this, stay here if you're happy here, or let's advance it
And go down.
right? And play around with this. Maybe we come down, maybe we're reaching for our foot, blah, 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 right? This whole thing. So for this purpose, I put it as a half pigeon. And again, we see the cues, the qualities, and the modifications. Why don't you do some reading for us, Lindsay, and show them on the camera? Because I think you're here.
I am. So
yeah, you're here and I'm here.
Half pigeon.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Which also could be done on a chair. That's a nice one to be on a chair as well. But you would want the base of support, like the pelvis and such, in the center of the chair.
Right.
So the chair doesn't tip.
Right.
That's important. But you could recreate. Noted.
So cute.
My lawyer, Pat Kelly, be proud of me. All right.
That's awesome.
I got a councilman for that. All right. What do you got?
So, talking about starting from downward facing dog. So, if you're in down dog and you lift one leg up, so you're in three-legged down dog, and then you bring your knee forward. So, again, we talked about working on parallel to the front of the mat, but either way, we'll talk right knee goes to the heel of the right hand, left toe, or the toes working towards the heel of the left hand. So that there. And then laying yourself down so that your left hip flexor is open, exposed to the floor. Bring the spine into extension as you softly drop your shoulders back and down. Fingertips are light, so you're working with the core to lift up and out.
Yeah, because if you have that death grip going on, then that's your first cue that you might be moving just a smidge out of where you might want to be. Right?
Yes.
What else?
Modifications. So talking about being on your back, doing like that figure four stretch where you cross your ankle over your knee, or a single leg stretch.
So we talked about this yesterday a little bit, in that this is the modification that I myself put in manual. But in reality, if your sequence is downward facing dog, three-leg downward dog, and then coming into pigeon, and then you're continuing to be face down,
right?
Then it doesn't really make sense in a vinyasa flow to flip them.
Correct. You're right.
So
there's other things we could do. You could use blocks if you have the props, right? Or you could even come up in like a low lunge, keep the back knee down, and kind of open the sole of the foot. There's other ways to get into your hip in that kind of a way, like lizard pose.
Yeah, almost. Right? Those are nice too.
Yeah.
What I've also been known to do is I do the pigeon before I flip them.
Yes.
So if I know that, right? So if that's the next thing that's going to be going on, then I can say, if for those of you, we're going to be moving into pigeon, any knee injuries, go ahead and come onto your back, invite a knee into the chest. Everybody else, walk them through the process. And then the next thing to have happen is have everybody on their back.
On their back.
That's where the flip's going to happen.
They all meet. Yep.
Right? Otherwise, I feel that maybe the practitioner might feel uncomfortable. Like, I'm
different than everyone.
Yeah, like I trusted you,
right?
And now here I am, face up.
Yeah, everyone's face down. That's happening.
What do I do? Oh my God!
Yeah.
Right? And
everybody has those moments in class, like in yoga class. You're like, what's going on here? Like,
this was I feel betrayed. I've had it happen to me. I'm like face up. I'm like, now what?
Facing the opposite side.
No, I don't want to skip my downward facing dog. That's my most favorite posture. Right? Which works for me because even though I have the tight hips, that doesn't show up in my downward facing dog.
Right.
So my downward facing dog is a more advanced looking posture than even my child poses.
Gotcha.
And this would be one reason why, which means probably more of Lindsay's classes. Open up those hips for me. So that happens. All right. What else we got? Qualities. What are qualities?
So qualities. So protecting your knee. Pressing the back side of the hip onto the mat. Your back leg is engaged. So your toes are flush against the floor, and back leg engaged. This is one of my favorite refinement tips in class. Always talking about like the warriors or like this back leg engaged, like pull up on your kneecap. You can touch your thigh and you can tell if it's hard or soft. That means it's engaged. So I always like to stress that.
That's a good one.
Neck is soft, right? So we don't want our shoulders up here when we're in pigeon. We want to just like down.
Yeah.
And then foot can be near your groin or parallel to the mat. So again, just like working on that trajectory.
Yeah, that works for you.
Yeah.
And in my classes, because I teach easy yoga, with Michelle.
Mhm.
That's my class. Have you been to my class?
No.
It's so easy. It's like the easiest thing ever.
Yes.
It's like full on. Like if you go out for dinner and you eat too much pasta, like
You can still take your
you
class.
can still take my class. Yes,
God,
yes.
who's not down for that? If you
Easy
eat too
yoga.
much dinner,
Truly.
you can still come to yoga.
Still come to yoga. And so my gentle class is so gentle that I often will just I'll leave it out. I won't even tell them where to put the foot
Right.
in my class.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if they have it,
Yeah.
then they're naturally going to move into it because they have the flexibility in their hips.
True.
And I do tend to draw an audience that doesn't really care where that foot is as long as their body's feeling good.
Yeah.
So like my approach is different than yours in that it's a lot less advanced, for lack of a better word, a lot less seasoned. Let's use the word seasoned. And X the word advanced and beginner. Nobody's a beginner, nobody's advanced.
No.
A little bit more
but it's
seasoned.
like more yin though. Like,
Yeah.
You can lay on. And
Yeah, you're just gonna hang out,
Yeah.
find where your body feels
The
happy.
forehead thing. The low, like,
Yeah,
same thing.
I like the forehead thing. The best way I saw it presented, I was in a class once. They had like a couple of blocks stacked,
Yeah.
and the forehead
Yes.
on the blocks. I'm like, this is great because I could never get my forehead to the floor, and everyone's talking about how good that is.
Mhm.
And my head isn't on the floor,
Right.
so I feel left out.
Mhm.
And after all, moments ago I was face up and I was the only one. Now then.
Right. And if it's not comfortable, it can be kind of like, it can be frustrating. Like,
Yeah.
How long are we going to hang out here for?
This sucks. I hate this.
Right.
And so giving them out. So when you give your students an out,
Mhm.
like what is some of the language you use that you can share with fellow people on this recording?
So I would think, because I teach primarily flow, so when we talk about a vinyasa flow with the chaturanga and the up dog, I always give, so when we're in plank, I always give the option for the knees.
Yes.
Especially in like a twisted lunge, I always give the option for back knee down. So just giving that option, even if I know no one's going to take it, to give the permission to be like, okay, I just want to have my back knee down today and it's fine.
Yeah. And it's okay.
It's really more than okay because sometimes you can even be more intentional with how you move when you're modified.
Love it.
Modified is not a bad word.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
When you're moving to something different.
Yes.
Roll with it with your badass self, I say.
Yes.
Right? This is good. All right. So then the next one that we're going to go to is, can you open up to create a class in your manual? And then we'll create a class is what we're going to do. How are we on time? Oh, we're at 7 o'clock already? Oh crap, that happened quickly.
Yay.
Okay, so you guys get like just a couple of minutes of the create class.
Yeah.
And wow, that's an hour?
Wait, no. Was
No,
it?
no, it's a half hour.
Half hour. Yeah, wait a minute. No,
Okay,
no,
I
we
was
started
here
at 6:30.
I'm like, hold on, that wasn't an hour. All right, we're good. Okay, scare set aside.
Yeah,
All right,
don't go
create class.
anywhere.
Yeah, stay here. Stay. Good thing that I got Lindsey in charge of this whole thing. All right, so the creative class. Why don't you walk through them, what this is, and what they can do with it?
Yes. So create.
And this one's yours.
Yes.
Yeah.
So create a class. So when we talk about just like a couple of sequences together, right? Just stringing them together. Like we talked about the pigeon sails, going from half pigeon down and then back to child's pose. Or another one that's common is like warrior 2, reverse warrior, and then back to warrior 2. So just kind of being able to move fluidly through a couple different poses together. So what should we pick?
Well, why don't we integrate these two?
The pigeon sails.
Well, we could do that, or if we're feeling frisky, we could include child's pose somewhere and pigeon somewhere, and then 2 other postures.
Yes.
Between it, and then we'll create a class with these folks and give them some examples of how to do that. And so while Lindsey starts thinking about, I didn't know I was going to do this right now. Hold on a minute, right?
On the
Classic
fly,
Michelle
we're planning a class right now.
Yeah,
Lindsey
right.
and Michelle's class.
So easy. So we're going to do that. Some key things that you want to do when you create a class is if you create like 3 or 4 snippets, like postures together and call it a snippet. And at the top of the page, right, if it's, get your pens, standing, kneeling, sitting, laying, prone, or supine. Supine is face up, prone is face down. And that kind of lends to the conversation we were having just a moment ago about if you give the cue that you can do this pigeon on your back instead, but yet the next posture is a downward facing dog, then your students might not trust you as much. So you want to group when you put these together. So in this case, I think we're either kneeling or we're headed towards prone face down in Lindsey's class. What do you got?
So
Ooh, downward facing dog. Yeah, I'm coming. I'm sold.
So
Yeah.
I had that we would start in downward facing dog.
Yeah.
Then make our way to pigeon.
Okay.
And then didn't know if we were going to offer there's two options.
Yeah.
You could you could say stay in pigeon if you're comfortable, if that's right for you, or we can take this to another one and advance it to king pigeon, which you get the extra stretch on the quad. So you're reaching for the back foot, bending at the knee, and getting that quad stretch, which definitely is there.
Right?
It's there.
It's full on. It's definitely there.
Yes.
Which is so important. So let's talk about the anatomy. Can I hijack it for a minute? All right, and then I'll give it right back to you. I swear. All right. So here you see these little muscles that are red from the core going into the quads, the front of the thighs. There. Commonly, these muscles are short because we sit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We sit. We drive. We sit.
Yes.
We drive.
We sit and drive.
We drive. And in many cases, even when we sleep, we do this with bent knees or maybe on the side body.
Very true.
Right? Not even so much like lying down with legs straight. And so the problem is that leads to a lot of lumbar pain, that low back, that low spine starts. I'm going to get my little skeleton for this. Some tight, I know I'm full on getting the Halloween decor for this. The low back is tight because it tugs and pulls on the hips, which are too short.
Yes.
So one reason to do yoga, long before cool pictures, one reason to do yoga is we can relieve low back tightness. And I'll do this on yours, Lindsay. All right. This literally, I picked this guy up for $9.99 from Walgreens.
Yes.
Well, actually, this is Les. He got a name. His name's Les.
Les.
He's had a severe neck injury. I'm just going to go ahead and turn his head forward. All right. We got him, but then I gave him to the CPR guy. Terry Ross, come see us and keep us renew our stuff for us. I gave it to him because he had a xiphoid process. Oh. And a lot of them don't. And that's important. In CPR, you need to know that. Like, right there, you need to know about that in CPR. Anyway, so in this lumbar spine, you see like a straight spine. See how it's rimrod straight for you? Mm-hmm. So you get the same benefit as these people here. Mm-hmm. So when the hamstrings or when the quads are strong and the hamstrings are short, it tugs and pulls on the low back. Mm-hmm. Same thing on the other side. If we don't have balance and the strength's in the quad, or if we're quad dominant, then it's also going to tug and pull on the low back. In either way, because the muscles come down here and wrap around through and over and forward, and then from forward, check this out, wrap around the knee. Mm-hmm. And that's why oftentimes when we have knee pain, it's actually what's going on in the pelvic floor.
Yes.
Right? It's not even the knee, it's the pelvic floor. Mm-hmm. So when we do things like the king pigeon, rather than sitting, which is equating to short muscles, Les is going to be here for the remainder of our programming.
It's the month of October, so it's fitting for Halloween.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
Right? So I had to wait a whole nother year to replace it after giving it to Terry. Because I'm like, yeah, you can have it. I only paid $10. Then I realized that was summertime. It took a while to get another one. Anyway, so as a result, these muscles here are short, right? So I don't know if we have a posture in here. Let's say, yes, here. Okay. So these muscles, you see how they're not engaged? Mm-hmm.
So like a seated forward fold, essentially, like a wide leg or just a single leg.
Yep. See, that's not engaged in the front, right? So you would want to pick a posture like this
to open that up.
So here's Les. Here's Michelle's very serious yoga teacher training. All right. And his arms aren't that long to reach the ground, so he's going to use the book here. And then as the toes come down, or maybe the foot stays flexed. Mm-hmm. Did you know a flexed foot really helps protect the knees? Yes. I picked that up. Yes. As well as in your pigeon. Yes. All right. So bending the knee here, inviting the heel there, and then reaching back, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe just with the one hand and holding for there. Demo. Yeah. Right? Demo. Then look at that. Look at all that hip flexion. Hip flexion. Extension that you're getting right there. Such a stretch. Right? Which is really nice. So moving it back into flexion, seated, anatomically, I definitely approach my yoga class in this way. Like, how can I move through from head to toe in my yoga class and have all of the primary movers have a chance to be active and also passive,
Right.
taking a turn. It's like, so have you ever been to a class where it's like, oh, we're going to do like a hip workshop, opening workshop, and you get there and it's like full on all hip work?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's not that great. Yeah, it's irritating. Really, you need like that full, well-rounded class.
Yeah.
Which is always like a good 30 minutes, like standing, and then 30 minutes on the mat. Like it's a good split.
Nice split.
Yeah.
Move the spine in the different directions, things like that. All right, let's talk about your class, and maybe you can share with the folks what it is, some cues, qualities, and modifications that you might use for your class, and knowing that there's no right or wrong in that whole thing.
Right. So, coming from downward facing dog, going up to pigeon.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to do my very serious yoga teacher training. Oh, snap. I'm going to have to plug that in. All right, continue. You're doing great, Lindsay.
So coming from downward facing dog, so you can either lift one leg up, so you're always in that three-legged down dog, and then we bring the leg forward for our pigeon, and then, keep straightening out our back leg, flattening out the toes, having the option to come down onto the forearms, eventually letting the head rest on the floor, and then offering them to either stay there, or if you're down, then pushing into your hands to lift the upper body, bringing your hands next to your hips for support, and then if you are going to take that opportunity to lift the back knee gently, and then just thinking about reaching for it. So
I'm such a shitty assistant. I get so involved in the lesson, I stop paying attention.
You start reaching back.
She's gonna fire me, I'm sure of it. All right.
And you're getting that shoulder opening. So it's just amazing, really. I mean, you can make contact with your foot, so then you're using the strength of your foot to push into your hand to open your shoulder, right? And then you're using your breath the whole time through. Yeah. So it's really just wonderful. And then, so coming from that, gently coming back out, not slingshotting, they say, just,
So what should I do? Should I bring the arm forward or the foot down first?
I would gently, release the foot and allow the foot to come down, and then bring your hand back for support. So coming from there.
Since it doesn't go this way, we're going to have it go this way. So that mindfulness, right? Which I think one of the students yesterday in yoga teacher training, they just said, untangle yourself, and I loved it.
Yeah, I like that also. I think that's great. From like Wild Thing, or just like go back. Sometimes I do that. I'm just like, everybody just meet back here.
Yeah, everybody. So from here.
From here.
What about like a hero?
Ooh, I definitely love hero. Like hero, tabletop, anything to kind of like slowly get yourself back into child's pose. And you can take a wide leg variation of child's pose. Which,
and also, people like me benefit
tighter hips
from whatever you have to make that happen. Right?
Yep.
Which is good. And I think we talked about the arms behind us.
Yeah, and palms face up. I like that. So you're like getting that and just break. So if you're always engaged in the downward facing dog, you think about your externally rotating your shoulders, so that when you're coming back to relax and you're lying down, you get that internal rotation. So you get that stretch, that release.
You know what's interesting about this, and I'm going to read this book cover to cover. As you can see, this one's brand new. I just got it yesterday. I was all excited. I had one and I gave it away.
Right?
Huh?
Used bookstore?
$9.99.
Yeah.
I kid you not.
Awesome.
And so, but I had to wait for it, because when I went in, she's like, "You've been here. You've called before on the book." I'm like, "I have."
I've been waiting out here.
So you may just want to take the hit and order it online. I don't know. Anyway, here's the interesting thing. When I make my way through this book, and I've done both. I don't get paid for any Kaminoff stuff, by the way. So this isn't a plug. The fundamentals, you can take the fundamentals if you take YTT through Edge, though, because we're licensed, we're friends. And the fundamentals go over the postures, whereas the principles go under the deep reasons underneath that. And that's my jam. I just took principles over the summer, for those of you guys that saw that. But anyway, I digress. Somewhere in this book, I will learn, if you don't know, that this is perfectly fine with the arms back and the palms up with the tight hips, but the child's pose, the forehead can't come down if the arms are forward. And I'm trying to figure out why that might be. And so one piece of it is, I think it has to do with the psoas muscles that are attaching to the pelvis, everything hanging out in the pelvis area, right, in the low back. Notice here I'm angled a little.
Mm-hmm.
I want you guys to see this. Notice here the difference. We're up high versus if we bring the arms forward in a magic sort of way for the purpose of demonstrating, right?
Mm-hmm.
The shoulders do something different. Did you see that?
Oh yeah, they pop up.
They pop up. And so that means that I have to come down further. Might now be on a book, right? Rather than a block if I don't have access to a block. But the shoulders are now lower, and this whole concoction is much tighter.
Mm-hmm.
Simply by having the arms forward than the arms back.
Yeah.
Which is something I just stumbled into. I'm like, I can do this all day. This is great. Put the arms forward. I hate it. Get me out.
Right.
Right? Yep. Can we have down dog again? You know, you'll find me in a down dog over there. I'm the worst student ever. I was so up to teacher. God forbid they're new. You know, because I'm just over there doing whatever it is I need to do for my body that day.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's interesting because sometimes they'll look to me, and especially if they know I'm a teacher, God forbid that I do training or anything, they'll then cue everyone to get into this downward facing dog. Because that's what Michelle is doing. And so it's really important to know that it doesn't matter what any one person has chosen to do on the mat.
Oh,
It's not a reflection of the strength of the teacher. But me, dolphin, forearms.
Oh yeah, I love dolphin.
Oh,
Really good.
all day long.
Yeah.
I feel like you get all of the lengthening in the back of the hamstrings here.
Mm-hmm.
You get everything else that you would get from downward facing dog, but you don't get the pressure on the wrists.
True.
And the amount of computer work that I do,
Right.
like there for a while, I was trying to figure it out. Like, what is it? Is computer work? You know, what is it? And then I started taking dolphin, and it just kind of gave my wrist the rest it needed rather than not taking the mat,
Right.
which is what a lot of people do.
Oh,
They
yeah,
take
no.
a break just because their wrists are bugging them because they have in their mind that downward facing dog is something like this, which actually, you know, the bent knees, look at him trying so hard. Less like shit, I'm gonna fall. He's got the bent knees, which also works. Here's my opinion though. I think you're better off coming down onto the forearms.
To getting the full stretch in the hamstrings. Well, so I
Yeah,
also
I do.
like with dolphin too, like if you're concentrating on pushing your head away from the floor so you're active in your shoulder girdle, it really builds some solid strength around your shoulders, which is important.
So much so.
Right.
You know, because many people have weak upper body,
Yes.
right? And so they load any work.
Yeah, and just like slouching forward, you know, and so it really teaches you the trajectory. Like that's what I love about yoga is I always talk. It's just like that coming out when they say lengthening. I know it's like that verbiage is like, what does that even mean? But as you continue to practice and you learn your body, your practice progresses organically as it will. You learn how to come out and lengthen, and so you can use, you know, that pushing away motion to find length.
And taking that time. That's nice. You see that alignment?
Yeah.
You see that the knee is in line. The ankle. We don't have any weird rotation happening with the knee. That's important.
Knees aren't splayed outwards or inwards. Yeah.
Yeah. You're better off elevating the hips than doing that.
Right.
Because the knee is not meant to do that. The knee doesn't.
Right.
I mean, it has a little bit of give, actually more than people give it credit for.
Sure.
But over time,
right,
can really ask for trouble. And so I like what you said about like finding that lengthening and that engagement, sitting up nice and tall. Here's something Leslie Kavanaugh, I like his approach to anatomy and yoga in that he kind of challenges some of the things we commonly say, hear, or do. And sometimes I'm like, but I say that all the time. Like most people in the room do. So it's not a ping. It's just, hey, could we reframe it and look at it another way? And so one thing is, I don't know if you've ever used the cue about move the fleshy part out of the way and come onto your sits bones to ground.
Yes.
And so this is what we're trying for, right? The stabilization of what we're talking about, right? Right? Because otherwise it might be like this or what however you might get.
Yeah.
And what he's suggesting, which is just mind-blowing, you can take it or leave it, he's suggesting you leave the fleshy part where it is because it's there for a reason. And I was like, well, let's try that. And I found that it did limit my practice more than moving the fleshy part out of the way. But it was almost like by just allowing myself to sit upright, it was then through the genuine earned practice that I was then able to revert back to what you see here without moving anything out of the way.
Right.
Which, play with it.
Yeah, no, I was actually
You
just
see?
kind of like processing that in my head. So, like I was,
Yeah.
I was thinking about feeling my sit bones on the ground and what that feels like when you move the skin out of the way,
Right.
or if like you just tilt back, like in boat. That's a perfect
Yeah.
example.
Ooh, I'll pull
If
it
you
out.
tilt
I'll
back
find
into
boat.
boat and you
Mhm.
wiggle around, you often find yourself like trying to get just on the sit bones, just on the bony part. Right?
What the
Like
hell is boat in Sanskrit?
Navasana.
I don't really speak Sanskrit, guys.
Navasana, and I don't really know that many. But
Sorry to even throw that at you.
right there. Oh,
Where?
Navasana
116. All right.
So that's true. Like if you use more of your core in that moment instead of trying to find the sits bones, then to draw everything in, it's
it's a whole nother different jam.
You're engaging all the muscles you're supposed to for that particular purpose.
Front and back.
Right.
So east is the front and west is the back. So when they say in a yoga class, stretch the west, that's a backside stretch, like a downward facing dog. It has to do with prayer.
Okay.
So old yogic roots.
Gotcha.
So when you hear like about like facing east, that has to do with like facing Mecca. We don't get into that much here at Power Ed Yoga Fitness LLC, but some do, so now you know.
Noted.
Check. All right. So these muscles. So now what we have is, if we could have put boat much earlier in a class on a different created class.
So that would be like a counter
That'd be a
pose.
whole other one.
That would think about it. That could be considered a counter pose to pigeon.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because instead of
sure
lengthening these out, now we're using the strength of our hip flexors and our core to pull together. So.
One day, Dr. Leona's going to come to her office and see that I've swiped her skeleton. Mary Beth has one to give us, but it's missing an arm. I'm a little on the fence if I can handle that or not. I mean, for the cause in a way. I don't know. Mine is one arm. I'm not sure. We could attach Les's arm. All right. So the boat. One arm back. Otherwise, I start the boat here, one arm back, or even both arms back.
I've never even done that before, but that's a great idea to get you in that line.
Yeah. And then if you have it, then let's start off with one arm forward, right? And maybe we bend the knee.
Right, I was gonna say
left, right.
The knees are bent. You can barely touch the toes. I love. That's the importance of it. So it's not like, can you get into your boat because your neighbor's into your boat?
Yeah.
And power through it doing who knows what.
That's where they get hurt.
Right. Can you maintain this basic foundation? Can you maintain this? It's a lot harder than you think it is because you're using all the right muscles.
Right. Exactly. And in that way, the only thing that's happened by bending this knee, let's see, is we might have a little less work in our quads.
Right.
So maybe we make a point of saying when we're in a different posture that we do emphasize that quad work so that it's touched upon, like in a different portion of our class, right? Because we know in boat, oftentimes many people fall apart when they go both arms up and both legs forward. And again, I find
you take your arms up a lot of the times you lose that like concave, your chest puffs, your shoulders are up here, and it's like, that's not the right posture.
Right. Yes. And why not? Like, it could just be a whole nother different posture, and that could be fine. Or it could be that you've put yourself out of alignment and you're working away from what we're trying to work towards.
Absolutely. It's not that you're doing it wrong. That's exactly it. It's that you're working away. It's a counterintuitive to why you're in yoga of trying to align properly.
Which is nice. Yeah. I start classes seated. Mostly because...
Same.
Do you?
Yes.
I do this because I don't do a lot with class plan design. Sometimes if I feel like we're going to work today, we might start off in Hero or Thunderbolt, depending on your lineage.
I love Hero's pose.
So do I.
Really like stretching the top of the ankles.
Yeah. If I start here, we're working.
Yeah.
I'm in this mood.
Same.
Versus the comfortable cross-legged pose. So that's a nice way that your people are rewarded from coming regularly, is they begin to pick up these nuances of the instructor.
Crap, we're going to work hard today.
We're going to get ready for this, right? Which is nice. Or some students like, they're going to celebrate it, right? Because they're all amped up and they really want that day. I always try to integrate a lateral bend. So we were talking about the movements of the spine. They include neutral, straight up and down, mountain. Flexion right now. The hips are in flexion. Extension.
King pigeon. So read that back then.
Bam. Lateral bend, the side bend.
moon.
I do it almost right away.
Half moon, yeah.
Because you don't need to be that warm to do a side bend.
No, and that feels so good. You can like get that stretch.
Right?
I like that.
Which is nice. I'm there too.
Rotation.
Rotation is the twist, which we want later in the class once the body's warm. And then the inversion is, your downward facing dog, or any case that your head is below the heart is inversion. So a forward fold.
I often do, I'm thinking it's not leg up the wall. It's, or legs up the wall would be one.
Okay, everybody get legs up the wall.
What's the one
We're going to put
thinking
less
of?
in Shavasana. How are we on time?
Shoulder stand.
Oh, yeah. That's one of my favorites.
I love shoulder stand.
Me too. I like shoulder stand into plow. I feel so strong.
Yes, I can genuinely feel like the lengthening of my upper neck.
Yeah.
And into my just all the way.
I also feel like I can do anything I put my mind to if I put enough time into it.
Yeah, that's very true also.
Which is really nice.
Effort is key.
It is.
And consistency.
So you need a wall, right?
Yeah.
Consistency and grace for yourself as time goes on. So as you can see, sometimes the legs fall sideways, and that's just part of it, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. What else you got? Okay, so tell me about your class. All right, so let's write in the cues, the qualities, and the modifications for these folks. And at the end, whoever came, I will shoot you guys the class plan that was here, provided there's a list of the people that have come and gone, or just drop your name in the comments field, and then you'll be able to see the list of Lindsay's class. So we did downward facing dog.
Yes.
So
cues are, we got so upward upside down V is a common one. Right.
Yeah, let's come into an upside down V. Simple.
Yep.
To the point.
Right. It demonstrates a visual in the mind. Pushing into the hands to send the chest back.
Yeah.
So push into hands. Hips towards the sky. And heels towards the earth.
Nice. I love the reference sky and earth.
I do too. I always wonder what people think about that, because I'm, sometimes I say ceiling and I'm like, yeah, it sounds not that great.
I like sky.
Yeah, it's up there. Right above.
You know where it is?
It's there.
Ish.
And the earth is
this
below
side of the
you.
earth anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So qualities.
How do you want the practitioner to move into this downward facing dog that maybe might advance the pose a little bit or tweak the pose a little bit? Or these are those sweet somethings that more seasoned instructors know, or instructors that have a strong personal practice tend to know. Like now we're going to do X.
Yes.
Right? And there's that moment.
Turn this pose on.
To turn it on. Nice. Yeah. How do we turn this pose on?
So my favorite, the thing that I ever really heard was the 2 jar lids. So if you think about having 2 mason jar lids underneath your hands, and without physically moving your hands, like you're in your down dog, but what does it feel like if you were to turn those lids slightly? So you automatically engage your lats, you pull your shoulders down and back, all this is turned on, and so that's one of my favorites. It really just hit home.
Love it. And that you present it in the form of a question.
Yeah.
What
would it feel like to you?
Yeah, which is all the difference. Yeah. Because your students, right? They may be physically struggling, and so they're just going to listen to you oftentimes. So that language is really important.
Yeah.
And feel your way into this and so on, rather than just do this. Trust me. Sometimes they'll just do it, even though it's not really maybe the best idea for them.
Right.
Okay, so where's the modification for down dogs? Do you go with the bent knee or do you go dolphin? Where do you normally go?
I guess I've always done the bent knee. Because if I do dolphin, it's with like a low plank, and it's considered kind of like a reprieve from that.
See, mine, I have a bolster sitting at the top of my mat, which isn't available to people these days right now at this moment.
Right.
But my whole class includes a bolster at the top of the mat.
Yes.
So that because,
I like that.
Right, because the bolster provides that lift, you can put your forearms right there, and that's really nice. But to your point, probably bend the knees.
Yeah, bend the knees.
It's more realistic.
Yeah.
More. So we'll go with bend knees for modification.
Bend knees.
Are we on time? 3 more minutes?
Yeah.
All right. Battery's dying. Well, that's okay. Cord isn't long enough. All right. I had a 3-foot cord in hand at Walgreens. They wanted $24.99 for the cord.
What?
Huh. Like, I'm not paying $24.99 for a damn knockoff iPhone cord because it's 3 feet long. But yet now here we sit. All All right.
Powering down.
Powering down. Okay, so we can't really go through the cues, the qualities, the modifications on all these other things. If you guys have a question, go ahead and drop them specifically in the comments field, and we'll answer them for you.
Or better yet, sign up for yoga teacher training, because essentially you get all of this and more.
And more.
And more.
And then some. And then access to all this goodies. So this is what we do. Like, we do this again and again and again. And then we break off into small groups, whether it be virtual or in person. It doesn't really matter. They're a Zoom breakout room or in person.
We're offering both right now, right?
Which is fantastic.
In
In person.
Yeah,
in person or online, whatever they want, or hybrid of both. Mm-hmm. Some people just want to come in person for this piece, do the rest online. That also works. Mm-hmm. So then they get a chance to just practice teach the other student with one or two people in the Zoom room or here in a group, which is a nice way, I think, to get your feet wet and kind of gain momentum before you tackle on a class. Agreed. So lots and lots and lots and lots of practice. We revisit this program or this process again and again and again. And in an ideal world, every posture that's seen in this manual is seen in this book. Mm-hmm. Many more are in the second one, in the second edition than the first. But I'm kind of liking the first edition's jam. Look how simple and clean it is.
Right. It's just like, it's just the basic. Yeah. It's like,
I'm
sometimes the basics are the best. Don't fix what's not broken.
Yeah, well, because the second one's like, wow, that's a read, isn't it?
Intimidating and like,
it is intimidating. Whereas this, like, oh, you can power through this, simple enough. Especially if you just pick one posture per week, learn that. By the time you're done with a year, you'll have 52 of them in your back pocket. Literally, pun intended, right? Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Thank you so much. It was lovely having all of you. Yoga teacher training, lots of things happening online, starting at $4.99, going up to VIP packages with one-on-one mentoring with yours truly or with Lindsay, whatever it is you want, whatever makes you feel happy. So things coming, details will be in the comments. So namaste.
Have a good weekend.